Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classics as Known Classics. This is episode number 1321 and Doubleshot number 1215. Yep, I have two more trades. The first one is the start of a new trade series. The second one is the end of a trade series. Well, for this volume anyways. First up, it is a series that actually just ended last year. Strikeforce, Volume 1, Trust Me. Yes, when I think of the words "trust me," I think of the Jake the Robber song, "Trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me," and a little beat will go along with it. Yeah, I've heard the song. It's actually really good. It's a song from the early '90s when he was part of the then WWF. Well, I wasn't watching at that point because I was 3 years old. I knew about it because of footage I've seen. Now, this book collects the first 5 issues of this 10-issue series. We're thinking, 10 issues. Why in the world last 10 issues? This started back in 2019, ended last year. You're probably thinking, end of last year? What's the chance because of the pandemic? Yep. That's the reason why the series was canceled. Was because of the pandemic. And this series is actually really good. Yes. This is another case of a good series getting canceled because of the pandemic because it's not one of the big titles. I'm like, really? It's got a great lineup. Yeah, it has a similar style that I love from Savage Avengers, taking characters people may not be familiar with. Now, if you look at this lineup, like, okay, some people we are familiar with, like, that's Damien Hellstrom. If you're a comic fan, you know who this guy is. If you're not a comic fan, we're like, who's this guy with the pentagram on his chest? We also have Monica Rambeau, who's going to be having her MCU debut soon. We have Wiccan, the reincarnated son of the Scarlet Witch. Yeah, there's a weird thing involving him. We have Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, here at the bottom. Dead center, we have Angela in her second group book she's part of. Yeah, the first book was actually Asgard Ends the Galaxy. We also have... Oh, wait! Is that the Winter Soldier, part of an actual superhero team? Well, this is technically the second group book he's part of, too. That's how they come in Angela. Second group book he's part of. Last group book he's part of was the Thunderbolts, which basically was the classic lineup with him in charge without Zemo. It was a really good book by Jim Zeb, if you check it out. And their leader is Blade. As far as I can tell for him, this is technically the third group book he's in part of. Yeah, third group book. Because first you had Night Stalkers from the 90s, then you have Captain Britain MI13, and you have this book. And there's been sort of basically a thing with Blade where like almost any book he gets put on, they almost get canceled right away. Because apparently he's not that big of a seller. Yeah, it's unintentionally like a pure coincidence. Look at, let's say, Night Stalkers, 18 issues. That's not bad, basically, compared to Captain Britain MI13, which was 13 issues. Spider-Woman, on the other hand, well, she's a part of Avengers, New Avengers, and... that's it. So for her, third book. Monica Rambeau, Avengers, Ultimates 2. So for her, this is her fourth book she's part of. As for Damien Hellstrom, because they mentioned here, this is actually the second group book he's part of. Because last group book he's part of, well, yes, he did appear Avengers on the cover, but that was something involving the young team. He was just there as a villain. I'm talking about an actual group book he's part of. The last group book he was part of was the Defenders, the original run from the 70s to 80s. He was part of that lineup when he was briefly married to, when he met and later married Patsy Walker, Hellcat, who basically he declared his marriage ended due to her dying. Wiccan, this is actually his fourth book he's part of. You're probably thinking, fourth book? Because when we think of Wiccan, people think of Young Avengers. Like, okay, what are group books he's part of? New Avengers, U.S. Avengers. Yep, so fourth book for him. Angela, of course, is my references to some of her books. Now, they do keep... Now, one thing... Now, this book is written by Tina Howard, of all people. Yes, Tina Howard. The same person writes Excalibur, which I think this book started at the same time as Excalibur. Though Excalibur, so the publishing, this book is not. Yep. Now, this book had a few different artists on it. Yes. The first 4 issues are by German Parlitia. Issue 5 by somebody Gestapo Kamakali. The cover art here is mostly done for the first 3 issues by Andrea Sorrento, with the first 2 issues co-done with Dan White, Artwork by issue 3 with co-dot by Matthew Weston. He also has the last 2 issues, 4 and 5, though he does it with Juan Jose R.I.P. Here's the cover for the first issue. Now, the series starts off with most of this land, minus Blake, because he's not part of this group yet. Now, this group was assembled by Freya to deal with the Black Bifrost. Yeah, where they were basically hunting on the remnants of that, and they apparently decided to steal a virus from a compound for some reason. They aren't really clear exactly to say why in the world they say it. And Blade, who is an Avenger, yes, you gotta thank Jason Aaron for that. Yes, making Blade an Avenger. You're thinking, Blade an Avenger? What? Yeah, Blade is an Avenger. What seems like the most bizarre thing. Because that's the thing when it comes to Jason Aaron's run for Avengers. You have a bunch of people who no one can ever be Avengers, and yet they're Avengers. He's not the only one. You also have the robbery as Ghost Rider. He's an Avenger too. And I think that's awesome. Some people might think that's a problem because Blaze had a minor problem with it, like I said, where basically in book he's on. Even his own book basically keeps untouchable getting canceled. But Jason Aaron, it's like, Jason Aaron, I mean, no one, Marvel won't cancel Avengers just because Blade is in the book. Yes. So, they get captured by the Avengers. The Avengers are like, what the heck is going on? And the team doesn't have a name yet. Their name Strikeforce hasn't come until like issue 3 or 4, which is quite interesting. So, okay. So, Blade takes up leadership of the team. As for who was leading the team prior to him taking over, they don't clearly say. Like, according to Jessica Drew, this team was just randomly put together, where she would just basically take it from her sleep. Like, she just woke up like, oh, you've been recruited. And she has, like, get this mission over. She's got a baby to bathe and feed. Really, which she does do here. So, they decide to go on a mission. So, they go to a temple, I think in South America, where it's a temple of the Vashante. You're probably thinking, Vashante? Sounds like something out of Doctor Strange. And it is. Yes, because when we think of the Vashante, people think of the Book of Vashante, one of the spell books Doctor Strange has. This is the actual species of Vashante, which are a group of shapeshifters. You're probably thinking, shapeshifters? Are these related to the Skrulls and Mystique? No, just different races of shapeshifters. Because that's the thing with Marvel Comics. When people think of shapeshifters, people think of two things. People think of the Skrulls or Mystique. Yep, people don't think of the Vashante. Yeah, they're basically a group of like minor Doctor Strange villains. And Wicked points out, though, that this is a place where Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom visited once. Like, they actually fought here. And, like, what? I do my homework. Which, okay, that's actually pretty smart of Wicked to do, because I'm sure you probably Googled this. And, yeah, that's actually pretty smart for a kid. Is like, it makes sense for him to do that. I mean, it not make sense for Jessica Drew to do that. Or Internet, but Wicked makes perfect sense to do that. Because, like, he's like some of us basically who grew up in the age of the internet. So, why not? Which is actually pretty smart of him to do. And they're here. Now, Damien Hellstrom, they find Damien Hellstrom at the actual place. He's not with the team at this point. They find him, and then they get a fight with him, and apparently they kill him along with some other Vashante. And then they get a phone call from him saying, it's like, hey, Jessica, my brother's in my nightclub, and he's acting really weird. Can you come here, please? Yes, calling up Jessica Drew to check up on her brother. So they go visit They go visit Satana the very next issue, and they find him somehow alive. Though this is not actually him. This is a Vashante. Yep, and this is a very interesting issue. Like, okay, so we have this really interesting moment where Satana comes back in her office after she was politely kicked out of her office, and then she comes back in. And then she proceeds to talk to Angela, like, you're hot. And then she proceeds to make out with her. Yep, Santana. Who has been hinted at, I think, as far as I can tell, I think she's hinted that she's bisexual. And Angela has been confirmed to be a lesbian. Yes, Angela. Now, you mentioned her brothers, Thor and Loki. And she does mention that she's older than Thor and Loki. I'm like, what? She's older than Thor? Like, okay, that's interesting. I don't know if Tina Howard took that inspiration of the older sister thing from the Thor Ragnarok movie, where Hela was basically retconned to be Thor's sister instead of being his niece. Yep. Yeah, and the kiss is like, man, it's like Angela must have really enjoying this kiss with a demon like Santana, who is a succubus. Yes, Santana is a succubus. And yes, in case you're curious though, like her brother, she's had her own feature in like, I think it was basically collected in the Marvel horror books. She has a couple features. She never had her own solo book like her brother did. And then all of a sudden, some members of Strikeforce just happily find Santana like, oh, she's webbed up on the staircase. And they come in and they say, oh, look. And of course, Wicked basically, here's the thing. Wicked is gay, but he actually approves of this. Yeah, he does approve of two women making out because he himself is in a gay relationship with Hulkling. And everyone's lost. I'm surprised that no one else had this reaction like, oh, that's not much of a problem. It's like, nobody much a reaction to seeing Angela making out with a woman. The thing is, not the first woman she's made out with. I mean, she had a girlfriend, like, in her own solo book, which they referenced that in the pages of Guardians of the Galaxy. So then she's like, oh, I think that the woman she made out with, that's actually the Vishanti. Nope, it's the woman they actually found on the stairs. That's the fake Santana. And the thing is, the kiss is never mentioned, like, I'm surprised they had this scene, like, Santana, like, oh, Angela, how'd you like that kiss? And she's like, I really like that. Give me your number. I'm surprised, basically, she doesn't do that. Nope. Then she just resurrects her dead brother, who just happens to join the team. Yep, and that's last day of Santana, and then they spend the last few issues just going back to Temple of Vishanti, where they happily, oh, by the way, the first issue, they come across a rogue Doombot. Yes, a Doombot. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then we have one issue in where it looks like Wiki is going to visit Hulk, like, he's like, man, you're home early. And it turns out this is not actually Wicked. It's a Vishanti. I'm like, really? How the heck would the Vishanti even know about their relationship with Hulkling and Wicked? I mean, what does they do? Read the internet? I mean, the Vishanti are very confined to their temple. I'm sure they may have found out about the relationship due to maybe reading Wiccan's mind. And then the Strikeforce show up at his apartment, where they blindfold Hulkling. And of course, they all tie him up too. And he's like, asks him to come with him. And he's like, no, we'll handle this. He's like, really? And then, of course, they knock him out. I'm like, really? You don't bring in Wiccan's boyfriend into this? Well, actually, it's his fiance at this point. And I'm like, really? Why wouldn't you? And eventually, by the end, basically, they're defeated. Though, at the end of this, they also have an appearance by the Ghost. Yes, the Ghost. They probably have this thing where they try to put people's souls back in their bodies. And, like, Monica and Bo is acting really weird. And it turns out the reason why she's acting weird in these compilations is because she's possessed by the Ghost. Yes, an Iron Man villain. I'm like, what? Like, why the heck would Tina Howard bring in the Ghost of all people, who's an Iron Man villain? And the thing is, it turns out Ghost is actually working for Carla Softon, Moonstone. I'm like, that's interesting. Yeah, because Ghost is a mercenary. He's also known for a corporate saboteur. But working for Carla Softon, that's interesting. Like, okay, she must have somebody who's financially backing her to finance the Ghost of all people. Yes, I think like the last book he appeared in prior to this, off the top of my head, was probably in the pages of Brian Michael Bendis' Iron Man series. That was the last time I could think of he appeared prior to this, but unless from Edgar, basically he's watched this video, he could probably point out what was his last appearance probably in this book. Like, these issues came up from mostly in 2019, these issues, so I'd say first appearance probably about a year or two at most. But for the start of the series, it's really good. I give this book a 9.5 out of 10. A damn good book. Shane, the book got canceled 10 issues because of the pandemic. This book was also canceled 10 issues, but not because of the pandemic, because of low sales. We had the second last trade for Deathlok. Well, the Nathaniel Emerson run. This is Man vs. Machine. This collects issues 6 through 10 of Deathlok Volume 5. Of course, all the artwork here is by the awesome Mike Perkins. And yes, it did tell me when I met him, the reason why this series ended was because of low sales. Which, I'm always perplexed by basically when I think about that. Like, this series, a really good series, gets canceled due to low sales. Like, how is this book not selling that well in 2014, 2015? Yeah, the book got canceled prior to Secret Wars, believe it or not. Yep. And they kind of, in a way, wrap up the whole thing of Control. They revealed this woman who's kind of in control, and the person behind Deathlok is a group known as Biotech. I'm like, that's interesting, because the thing is, prior to this book coming out, the first time I heard the name Biotech was actually in the TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I think that, yeah, that was the first time I heard the name, because they're not a really recognizable name outside the comics, like, let's say, Raxon. I mean, people know who they are. Or, let's say, Stark International, or Hammer Industries. People know those companies from Marvel Comics, but Biotech? Yeah, people don't think of Biotech. The way Deathlok depicts them, it seems like there's this secret organization that sends out Deathloks on a suicide mission. Like, okay. And they actually bring in the actual 90s Deathlok in this book, Michael Collins, who does transform into his Deathlok appearance. Which I'm like, that's interesting. I get the fact, I'm glad the fact they actually do that. Because here in the back cover, here he is in his classic 90s look, which I thought was so cool. The fact that Emerson basically had him come back in the book. So, it's also that Andrea Hope, like, after she supposedly found something about Control, she apparently got knocked out and she was out for about 3 days. Yes, blacked out for 3 days. There was hints of something wrong with her, but they'll delve into it like the last page, the last issue. So, Deathlok, finding out about basically what was going on with him, well, Henry Hayes, decides to be mission to go on a couple more missions with Control, and then he's going to take him out. Yep. So, at one point, they kidnap his daughter. Yes, they kidnap his daughter. And Maria Hill is basically back in the series after she's been sort of been off the side. And apparently the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, basically, who are interrogating Andrea Hope in the last 2 issues, apparently they're questioning, like, why are you on this? Why are you on this mission? And she told them, I was authorized to do this by Maria Hill. Let me talk to her. And they're like, Maria Hill's busy. I'm like, dude, like, you can easily call Maria Hill. I'm sure these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents basically can easily contact Maria Hill, like, put a message with her to verify this, and then later on it's like, oh, like, the whole investigation is completely dropped by the next issue. Like, okay, that's interesting. So, yeah, apparently the reason why her memory was wiped, and in fact she was out for 3 days, was because apparently she got too close. So he's like, okay, I need to go find Deathlok, Michael Collins. Because originally she was told not to go after him, and she's like, yeah, I'm going to go after him. And then she just finds him in his apartment really easily. And they chat for a while. He does give a little bit back history of his time as Deathlok, which I thought was interesting. And I thought it was really cool he did that. Though I would have liked it if they threw it in some, like, editor notes, like, to figure out what, like, to get, like, if you're familiar with only this book of Deathlok, and like, oh, Mike Collins, he was a previous Deathlok. Interesting. But lucky enough that we actually, in this trade, we actually have, well, this is the Luther Manning Deathlok, but there is a trade paperback that does collect his 90s run. These people know what kind of talk. They could advertise him. Nope, they didn't. So I was like, okay, you want to find Henry Hayes? Get Domino. She found me easily. And they just have her find Domino. Yep, they find her, they talk to her, and they convince her to go find Henry Hayes, who basically in the last few issues is going on a rampage in Control headquarters. And he does find the woman who was basically on his side. Well, apparently because she decided to care about him. She was going to have some procedure done to her. She got knocked out. And then he frees her. And then next time we see this woman, she's basically perfectly fine. It's not very clear exactly what happened with her. And they shut down this facility at Biotech, which apparently was their main base in Switzerland of all places. Yes, Switzerland. And I'm just checking some here. Yeah, so they shut it down, but they apparently still somewhat active in a way. So Andrea Hope is actually promoted to be charged of a task force. She gets her own office. She gets Michael Collins to work with her. And it's hinted that she possibly has Henry Hayes working for her too. Because they want to shut down any remnants of Biotech. Because they're on the main base. So there might be other remnants out there. Got to shut that down. Like, okay. And I think ends with an interesting note where she's apparently going to go to sleep. And then she apparently, seems like a program activating her. And that's where the series ends. It's like, huh, wonder what that was. Yep. Like, something got a really interesting cliffhanger. Yes. That issue came out in 2015. That was 6 years ago. But this book is actually pretty good. Give the book roughly a 9.5 out of 10. Now, final thoughts on this short-lived series. Yes, short-lived series. Now, prior to this, I think like the last Deathlok book was published back in early 2000s prior to this. And that book didn't last long. I think it lasted about 7 issues. Though it's not as long as the original 90s run, where actually it was the second volume for the series, because there's been a few different volumes of Deathlok over the years. So the original volume was done by the late Stuart McDuffie. Excuse me, yes, this book is actually really good. Pretty fun. Though, I think the reason Marvel decided to launch this series was because they had Deathlok show up Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and they had a similar premise that one did, but it wasn't as lazy as the one in the show, where just basically make him like Marvel Cyborg. This one, they kind of went that route, but not fully per se. For one thing, he actually looked like a freaking Deathlok because most of his body was covered by something. Well, the helmet was basically part of cybernetic stuff, and the suit itself was like a freaking Deathlok suit. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Yes, and it's very much in a similar style and tone of the Mike Collins version, who was the Deathlok in the 1990s. Which, it was great that Edmondson brought this character back. And apparently, this is a series he grew a mustache. And it's quite interesting, though. Deathlok, Mike Collins' original body, he was black. I'm like, okay. I'm not really sure why they did that for. I mean, it's been a while since I've read the 90s Deathlok series. But I could have sworn Mike Collins was white. And here he's black. I mean, I get Henry Hayes, he's black because that's what his character is. My guess, Mike Collins was black originally, but it's been a while. Like I said, been a while since I've read the original 90s run. It was a good run. And it is in trade, believe it or not. Yes, that run's in trade. This in particular, I kind of felt this Marvel should give this character a lot more light. Now, what happened with these characters as the events of the series wrapped up? Well, Henry Hayes' daughter was never seen in comics after this. Yeah, it's been 6 years. She has not made appearance. She got written off in here where she's basically put witness protection. Henry Hayes himself, post-Secret Wars, became part of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series. We had a big role in the series where he made Gemma Simmons a Deathlok. And after that, one series wrapped up. This was back in 2016. Nothing. The guy disappeared from our comics. He has not made an appearance since then. I mean, it's for his last appearance, that was 5 years ago. Yep. As for Andrea Hope herself, she disappeared as soon as this comic ended. She never returned after this. I would have thought, though, that they would have, it was very hinted at that she possibly could have a thing for Henry Hayes, but it was hinted in the book that she may have had a thing for him, but it never went anywhere. She, of course, completely disappeared. She stopped appearing in Marvel Comics after this. It's almost like Marvel creators forgot this character existed despite she worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. And also this kind of ended the whole thing of, because throughout from 2013 to 2015, Marvel had this thing where they had Maria Hill appear in a lot of books on a semi-regular basis. I mean, not only this book, but also Black Widow, Uncanny X, because Bendis was writing the book, she occasionally appeared in the book. We also had her appearance in, Secret Avengers, and Immortal Hulk and the Hulk Volume 3. Yeah, she appeared in about 6 or 7 books at the same time. It was during a period of time that some people could say was overexposure for Maria Hill, but she basically was doing her job, and the reason why she's appearing in those books, because those characters are connected to S.H.I.E.L.D. The reason why she's appearing in the X-Men was because Bendis created her. Though apparently they had this thing where, if you notice though, whenever Chris Botchell draws Maria Hill, he always gives her diamond earrings. And if you see her appearance in any of her books she appears in, she does not have earrings on. She looks the same, you can tell this is Maria Hill, but no earrings. Nope, no earrings. I'm surprised no one's pointing this out though at Marvel, that apparently only Chris Botchell can give her earrings, and yet no one else could. Not even Mike Perkins. Whenever he draws Maria Hill. Also, I love issue 7's cover. Basically, It's already hoping sexy as ever. Yeah, this is because basically that's one thing I love about Mike Perkins' artwork. He makes the women so sexy, like so freaking gorgeous. Like it makes you like say that you really like it makes them like so beautiful. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we can find a close up of basically Maria Hill in here. Here's another really cool shot of anyone going on a rampage. I'm gonna find it here. Like this is how Mike Perkins draws Domino. Really good. Like the way, like I said, the way he draws women, draws such beautiful women. Like this is the close-up he does of Maria Hill. Now sometimes think it's for a guy, but yeah, that's Maria Hill. And you almost kind of could mistake her basically from a point of view. I mean, in a way, she does not look like Kobe Summers at all, which is good because you don't need to have characters who appear live action look like the live action counterparts. Like, they've done this a few times. Like, at one point, they made Daredevil like Charlie Cox for some reason. Yes, that I agree with a lot of people. That was completely unnecessary for the artist of Daredevil to do. I mean, why would you make him like Charlie Cox for? Draw Daredevil like he's normally drawn when he's not in the mask. Don't make him like Charlie Cox. I know at one point that Charles Xavier was Charlie Patrick Stewart, but that was fine because the guy actually looked like his comic counterpart. But at least that Maria Hill was not drawn like that. Now you're thinking like, okay, isn't the current Nick Fury drawn like Samuel Jackson? Well, he is based upon him, yes. But that Nick Fury is the son of the original one. Yes. So he was created exclusive for the comic book. So he's based upon the Ultimate version. And some say, oh, we have Black Nick Fury in the movies. Let's have a Black Nick Fury in the comic books. But just like some people thinking that, oh, did Marvel just skin change the original Nick Fury to black? No, they basically made the current Nick Fury, the one who's black. They named him Nick Fury's son. The real name would be Nick Fury Jr. And I think that's better to do than just basically say, oh yeah, he just Nick Fury, the one who's been around since the 60s. Yeah. But in the case of Deathlok itself, it's a good series. I kind of wish basically we would have had continuation of this. Like, I don't think we would have had a big problem with the book kind of relaunch, but nope, we just had it in the book because of low sales. And then do practically nothing with the characters in the series. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can think of any book Andrea Hope has been in since the book ended, or even Henry Hayes outside of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is a really good comic book. Well, not really, no. In the case of Strikeforce, so one book for that, and that's it. But Deathlok, yeah, Emerson run's done. Emerson had a really good run with Deathlok. Well, he wasn't exactly big known characters, let's say Punisher, Black Widow, but I think he had a lot of fun with the character. Though he would only do about 2 more books after this. 1872 for Secret Wars and Red Wolf, and that's it. Isn't that quite strange, though? He worked on just 2 books, and then he does nothing marvelous. I'm not sure what the hell Emerson even does nowadays. I mean, his last book ended 5 years ago, so who knows what he does nowadays. Yep. So yeah, that's a particular review. Stay tuned for my reviews for One Piece, My Hero Academia, and Boruto. And these are going to be interesting ones, okay? This is the video. Bye. Come on. Thank you.